Thank you so much, Fiona, for the introduction and also for having me here for this discussion. What I thought before we get on to the discussion about the level playing field is to basically lay down or set the scene with regard to what do we understand by digital labor platforms and how they impact the labor market. So, what I thought of answering is basically two questions about what exactly do platforms do and what changes do they actually bring about to the labor market, and what strategies are actually required to create a level playing field and what has been done till now today. So if you look at the growth of the platforms, as we all know, it's been increasing. But I think much more importantly, what's important for us to recognize that is that they have penetrated across all the different sectors of the economy. So, what we normally know is much more the taxi and delivery, but what we increasingly see is that they are in whichever sector that you want to touch upon, whether it is the domestic workers, whether it is healthcare workers, whether it is medical consultation, whether it is personal services. And there's a lot of work that is today done online. And that's not only just the freelance or the microtask work, but also a lot of legal patent services, software programming, data analytics that is being done. So the penetration is very high. Now, when you have such a high penetration of platforms in different sectors of the economy, what exactly does it mean? I think there's been one debate that has been going about, that is whether they create employment opportunities or not. And I think we need to recognize that in many of these sectors, which are there in the convention sector, that is the taxi, delivery, domestic workers, nurses, healthcare workers, personal services, what the platforms do is they basically disrupt the labor market. And this is especially much more in the developing economies, because what happens is the consumers start actually utilizing these platforms because they get huge subsidies and you get very cheap rates to get the work done. So as a result, many of the workers are actually forced on to get themselves registered onto the platform. So as a result, the traditional sector or the conventional sector gets disrupted. Now, the discussion around the creation of additional employment opportunities within that context is for a very few marginal number of workers which are within the delivery sector. But what it does, what the platforms does for many of these workers is that it changes the way the labor processes are undertaken. So there's a transformation that happens, and it changes the work relationship because many of them get categorized as self-employed or independent contractor workers. As a result, they don't get any sort of a labor or social protection benefits. But other than that, it also brings in income instability, lack of access to work on a regular basis, and the algorithmic management practices that is there within the platform, it actually precaritizes many of these workers. So in, in reality, you neither see any significant increase in employment opportunities or reallocation of labor, as one would argue about. Now, where there is a potential for new jobs to be created is within the area of emergence of Web 2.0. And this is largely related to the microtask platforms that we see. And here again, you not only have microtask platforms, but also a new generation of BPO and call centers that have come in, where a lot of it has to do with creation of new AI-related tools, AI machine learning services, or improving the web in a way that it is easily accessible to people, and content moderation. Now, within this element, now what's happening within the labor market is that many of the workers who get engaged in it, they get engaged largely because they want to supplement their existing income because they're in a precarious condition, or it is because there is not enough employment opportunities that are there, or it is because of other childcare or old age responsibilities that is there. What we also see within the kind of people who do these tasks, it is very highly educated. So what happens within the labor market is you have very highly educated workers, especially in the developing countries, and this is also the same even within the developed world. But what you see is that a very high proportion of them are with STEM education. So it basically begs the question saying, is this a kind of jobs that need to be created? And what is happening to the labor market within these countries if highly educated workforce is actually used for doing these menial tasks? So this is in addition to the existing working conditions that these workers have to face. The third area where you find where platforms have had a huge impact is within the freelance or the competitive programming or the talent platforms, which includes a whole range of highly skilled workers, that is from software programming, legal, patent services, where you would see that all of this work is being done in the conventional labor market. But today you find a lot of this work is being done in the platforms. Now, there are a number of challenges that are existing for many of these workers. Even if one were to argue that there might be a small proportion of the workers who would be self-employed within this category, what's different compared to the platform is that they would have a command and control over the work that they do and also the price that they would actually go about charging. And all of this is quite sacrificed because workers then compete with the global labor market. And what you see increasingly is heavy subsidization, heavy self-exploitation on the part of the workers to ensure that they have access to work, because access to work is dependent upon ratings. And you can get good ratings only if you complete a number of work. And you would have good feedbacks if you did it for a very cheap cost. And what we also see with many of these workers is that there's a huge cost that is pushed on to the workers. It's not just a capital cost and the maintenance cost, but even to access work, workers have to spend quite a bit of money. So as a result, what you find for many of the freelance platform workers is precaritization of high-skilled workers, especially with IT and professional skills, who would normally be in the formal sector, having both labor protection as well as social protection. Now, given these challenges, so what is underlying with the platforms is the transformation of work processes and the use of algorithmic management practices for precaritization. Now, in response to that, there has been some extent of unionization to a very large extent through informal worker associations who have actually brought out many of these cases either to the judicial bodies, or there has been certain attempt or pressure on the governments to bring about certain legislative reforms. But it's very interesting to see that the kind of responses that we've had till now have been quite varied. You have the global north, where you have very good institutions and having a very defined way of saying that let's establish an employment relationship, because this would then ensure that workers would have both labor and social protection benefits. So you see, that's the way global north, Europe, and many of the other states within the US have been going. But in the global south, it's very mixed. What you find is a mixture of social protection, trying to ensure that there's data transparency, providing occupational safety and health. But what's interesting is in the last couple of years, last 2 years, I would say, there is an effort by the governments in the global south, largely in the Asian countries, to bring these platforms within the particular sector. So it's like trying to ensure that sector-specific regulations are applied to the platform companies. So even if they're registered as an IT company, there is a pressure now to say, no, you have to register within the sector specific. And there has been a push towards the taxi companies to actually being registered and followed the transport sector specific regulation. So this is a very, very good step ahead. So that would ensure that it's a fair and a level playing field for many of these traditional enterprises as well as traditional workers. And it ensures that, the workers are by the end of the day actually protected as a result of that. Now, we at the ILO have gone about recommending as one of the way forwards is very clear international policy dialogue and coordination, not only around the issues of labor law, but also issues around algorithmic management and data protection. And towards this, the ILO has gone about having an expert meeting last year where there was a discussion about, what are the issues and what are the challenges and how can we move forward. And one of the outcomes that came out was to do a normative gap analysis to see how the existing conventions and recommendations can address it. And this was presented in March to the governing body this year. And it was very clearly decided based on that we need to have a convention. So the office is now preparing a law and practice report so that this would be distributed among the social partners as well as the 187 government partners. And to move forward, we would be having a discussion on decent working conditions in the platform economy in 2029, which would be a double discussion at the International Labour Conference in 2025 and 2026. So I think with this, I'd like to hand it over to Fiona to take us through the panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Thanks a million, Uma, for your extensive talk and also giving us an overview of the space where we are now. Really great to hear that the ILO has also picked this up within the convention. And I think it's good to understand how regulation also for specific sectors is important in this topic, right?